Alex Ansary here, coming to you from sunny southern Colorado. It is April 1st in the year 2019. Here to let you know that for simplicity's sake, that I'm going to be changing the URL of this YouTube channel to OTBTV News. That would be youtube.com/OTBTV News. And I will also be launching OTBTV.net. In this video, I'll be talking about some of the realities of living off the grid that are fairly simple, easy to understand. Things regarding being stuck, having to get unstuck 3 years later, reflected on some of the most important items living off the grid. Also, the trial and error with purchasing certain small items to help complement this experience. Sometimes we learn there's a lot of crap out there. Also, when it comes to food, buying stuff at the grocery store isn't always the best deal. I think there's certain things in bulk, and I'm like returning my focus to certain, bare bones basics like peanut butter and granola in bulk, and trying to decide on the right companies. So as we go into quote unquote this next collapse, and we're also seeing signs of it. I did a recent video on the homelessness epidemic in Seattle. It's not just there but elsewhere. Predominantly I've been speaking about Portland, Oregon. The point is we need to be thinking outside the box of the norm, outside the grid, if you will. And for some of you in a collapse situation, your survival will be reliant on you being able to access the things that you need where you are. So you could be in an urban situation in your home, and in no way, shape, or form is it about bugging out. I think people will constantly lose themselves when fixating on other people robbing them. Some of us, people like myself, that have gone much of their lives without the luxuries of having lots of toys and family, close family in nearby proximity, and or loved ones. Um, there's a certain amount of like emotional turmoil, obviously, that comes with that way of life. There's also a certain level of freedom when one gets close as an individual, right? Waking up to where we are, where X marks the spot, the volatile nature of so many different things that we're in right now in this world. And so it's also a time to take care of business, whatever business needs to be taken care of. For myself, there's information that is important that I share with the world. Others don't have that type of focus, don't have that type of motivation, don't have that type of drive. I do. I want to talk a little bit about some of the basics of living off the grid. Now, for me, as a person that talks about things of an outside the box nature while living off the grid, it's not something that's commonly done. Sure, I tip my hat to other people that have made it, that have had YouTube channels, that live in rural areas, that do their own thing. There's also a lot of like abstract content that I bring into this. Some people think that I talk too much about certain topics, that maybe I should talk more about certain things. I can only be who I am, an authentic, sincere Alex Ansary that talks about issues and only issues that he's passionate about and that he feels that he knows a few things about, sharing those experiences with the audience. So that's what I do here. That's why I stay away from certain other things. And here's the kitty who wants to be a part of the presentation. But yes, it wasn't until recently that I got a cat. It would be last year in August. So the cat's going to be one around July of 2019. And the kitty's name is Sukanara. Okay, so the kitty it's a handful in a good way. There was a lot of concern before with some cats that were here before, wild cats that were not spayed. This cat has been spayed. This cat has come from the Humane Society. And I try not to be bitter about it, but to appreciate it. But it is true that I'm closer with a member of another species, basically, rather than another human. And yet I am close to many of you in a remote sense. But there is something about black cats being rejected. And there's a little statistic there about black cats not being adopted at the same rate as other cats because of superstitions. So in the human world, we may face our own challenges, and in the animal world, they face their own challenges as well. We also might see like a marked up price on certain animals and, you know, certain things that I may not identify with that other pet owners may. With regards to this, it's more like a friend. And having that trust and seeing that that animal is smart enough and psychic enough to also pick up on the boundaries of the property and to have a certain amount of survival instinct that is hardwired into the cat that is not going away, that it was born with, that it didn't necessarily need to learn. Although I'm doing some of my exercises here off the grid in the privacy of my own shed, um, the cat enjoys the show. So today I got back. I always like to do videos when I had that extra oxygen because it's a whole difference of 1,000 feet difference, probably 8,000 feet elevation. And so without actual physical contact, without much social media engagement, but I'm getting used to that. It's still the detox, as well as detoxing from the comment section, all things social media, including Twitter, including Discord. I'm not messing with any of it. Once in a while, an email comes in. There's not, there's really nothing that I can say with regards to social media that has taken up my time. Because I realized that for my mind to be off the grid, to follow my body, right, just going to be the body off the grid, that for the mind to be off the grid, it has to be less engaged with a lot of these other little minds that are out there. And although some of you that are in my shoes may not understand it, what it's like to be off the grid full time and then to be so sensitive that you're picking up on other energies, other intelligences, and having strange dreams, and also games where people could be trying to project things when we can manifest in dreams, but rather spiritual parasites could be trying to manipulate people's relationships by creating certain types of dreams and creating different types of dramas or other connections through dreams. They're actually more simulations. Excuse me. So without trying to overly complicate it, and the kitty will get its time to run around. I gotta remember to give that kitty its midnight time, even though I'm not out there, so the cat can develop its sight more and more. But various different things with regards to going to the next town over, and the kitty's trying to get in the bag there. I bought some groceries, including some salad. It's important that as we go into spring and the sunlight comes out, there's a reason why gym memberships are going to go up. There's a reason why people are maybe having that extra craving for juice. We had a recent sunspot, AR36, that has already passed, but recently there were some expectations that we were going to get hit with a coronal mass ejection. The way that I'm interpreting this is the rise in activity as we go into spring, as we see more of this geomagnetic activity affecting the Earth, usually this time of the year, because of the equinox. And so this is a time, astrology aside and moon phase aside, this is a time just based on nature where seeds are planted. And by the way, on the topic of seeds, so it really is, I wanted to hit on the most basic things, the complications with maintaining a garden with a car like that, because I already poured hundreds of dollars last year, 350, the shocks behind. Then I got a ticket, unfortunately, for no insurance that was $500. This year, right, there was some repairs with the tire rods, and there is the ball joints that were replaced. And the reality is, the roads are really effed up after it snows and the snow melts and it becomes mud. Many of these roads that lead to the highway are privately maintained or maintained by other entities other than the Colorado Department of Transportation. I'm in the state of Colorado. The off the grid dirt roads are maintained by local authorities, local officials. I'll tell you, one guy, man, is like yelling at me like, "You need to follow the lines," because they pave the road in different phases of the year and also spray mag chloride. Now, the reality of off-grid living and why this is relevant in my story is so much of what has enabled the modern man to live off the grid without hunting his own meat and having his own chickens is simply being able to drive into town for supplies. And being that I'm in poverty and I only make so much, um, it's like an ongoing success story, not full success like something that would end up in a magazine or a TV show, but my own private slice of success. No, it's not set up the way most women would want it, nor is it even open with an open sign for a random person to walk in and go, "I live here now." I'm not even trying to even telegraph that. Um, but there were other times, and I'm going to let the kitty out because it's just the best thing to do. There were times where my imagination, you know, dabbled in certain areas, but as we inch forward more and more, and I adapt to this way of life, I evolve beyond where I was when I got here and the year after that. And, one could even say that I violated some basic rules of psychic self defense. It's like not recommended you go and isolate in the mountains. And I would say that me personally living off the grid here, where there's literally, and I feel this so strongly intuitively, especially after Bill Gorman showed me those rocks. It's my own private little take. There is a certain level of magnetism that keeps some of the people here in the dark ages, and I can feel it. And I can also feel when there are people trying to break out of that. There's also another place called Grand Junction, Colorado, and there was someone on Facebook that talked about how dark it felt there and why she left there for Portland. So I can understand and have empathy for people from California, other states that have seen some of the positive things said about Portland. They just don't know about the nitty gritty. And some are able to overlook some of the nitty gritty in order to have a positive experience. I ultimately came here chasing a positive experience. And it more or less has been living like a modern monk without taking it to extremes, more of a middle way. So I live like a monk, but I'm not perfect. I break some of the rules. I don't mean like I'm an outlaw. I mean like I break some of the rules. Here I am, a modern man, and I have the luxury of having multiple computers, an internet connection that connects to satellite. I want to connect with and talk about why I was out today. Um, I'm happy to say that my generator was repaired for about 20 bucks. And I'm missing some tools, but with a simple 8 millimeter thing, popping the thing off at Ace Hardware, took me a while to find it. I'm glad I didn't go to the other place because they wanted like $70. But I was able to get it done, and the people are pretty friendly there. I normally encounter a lot of robot behavior when I'm in town, but I'm basically a poor person that is creating his own media thing. I'm not just living off the grid, I'm living off the grid while creating content, and that content happens to be extraordinarily outside the box. It didn't start here. My journey started in 2004. Actually, some of my very first episodes was recording Clyde Lewis of Ground Zero Radio do stand up at Dante's Inferno at 3rd and Burnside. I wish I still had some of those early cuts. A lot of old content of mine is still in a box somewhere. But we all start somewhere. And I remember that was the start of outside the box before I went outside the grid, off the grid. And it's all been part of a similar theme to become more independent from dependency. And sometimes we break some of the rules. So there's going to be people that scoff just to scoff, and they'll look for something to say you're not off the grid, you're on social media, you're not off the grid, you're on the internet. When this is the modern world, the modern world has enabled someone to be off the grid, but also on the internet and to generate some form of revenue related to that which they do. Now, I want to let you know that it was also Much easier to be a media guy like me in the grid, younger too. Restaurants like younger guys, not a guy who's like 40. It's like going to be less of a psychological tension too when they're hiring the hottie young chick straight out of high school. And so, what you have when you're in my shoes and you're nearly 40 years old and you don't have a stable work history, even if a guy wants to change his life, that's not something that comes just naturally. Like, oh, you know what? I'm bored with this now. You know what I'm thinking is right for me? Straight up TJ Maxx. Yeah, when I get done with that, I'll go work for Ross. Hell, we'll just close up shop here at the YouTube channel completely. And then when I'm done with that, I'll go do dishes at Denny's. And then I'll have all this money, hundreds of dollars. What am I going to do? Hey, you know what? Maybe I'll go drink some more. Hey, maybe I'll meet a chick and buy stuff for her. Now I'm just kind of like throwing crazy stuff out there. Not trying to get all wild. Not trying to go that far. Although I do remember being 18 once and taking a certain person out to the mall and literally spending hundreds, thinking that just certain actions automatically XYZ equals 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, not always in some cases. And so, having said that, experiences, all the different things that would be in a book. The realities of off grid living, you got to maintain certain things. Certain things are a headache, but in the end, it's worth it. Then I have to face my own demons. Don't want to be out there partying because, like, the anticipation and the desire can literally fester. So the Zen space is to be beyond the obsession and desire while being in a place removed from the party life. And let's just be frank, some decent food sometimes. I'm not the best chef, I'm not the worst, but in no way have I evolved to the level of chef answering. Now, throw in some interesting ingredients, and I love a place like the Mongolian Grill. But even though it doesn't, may not be the best meat option, certainly better than some fast food options, and you get more of your money's worth. Just make sure they cook the food right. That's where the extra spice comes in for that undercooked chicken. That's why I like it when you have the lamb there. There are a lot of you that do travel around the nation, and yeah, I remember times in which I traveled more and had more money, and ate out more. I remember when I lived in Dallas, it was Taco Cabana that I would eat out a lot. I also ate at, I know, I'm going to hear the jokes, the Chinese buffet for $8. Like, how can you argue with that? It's just you want to stay away from certain things. And then there's some nicer buffets. I mean, some of you been to some of the Indian buffets in like Portland? They're really good. In fact, they have like mini zines and magazines. Shout out to Eli Ritchie. I want to thank you again for your donation. I'm even honored that there's a Portlander out there that's watching, that films the police, that's out there doing. Even though there's people that don't like what he's doing, he's the only person that's raising certain issues regarding people that are left behind, despite the people that are elected on Portland City Council. Eli, if you're watching, we should do a follow-up discussion going deeper into the parallel experiences that both of us have had. As biracial men born in Portland, Oregon, the challenges we have faced as activists, the truth that we believe that we have found through our challenges, what our individual solutions happen to be, where are their parallels, and where is there healing with regards to discussing our story. And part of my story, by the way, when I initially came, I remember someone doing a reading for me, and I had a lot of those, okay? But there are times in the past where some people offered to just provide their own insight. And one person who was associated with Leon's online school, in which I was learning those initial grounding meditation techniques, in which I passed on to you some of the basics in that 45-minute video. But we can do it again. Do it again in which, I discuss in kind of a loose conversational tone different ways to meditate or different ways of focusing on your breath, not just one way. And when I sit down under the sun, I kind of want to cover a number of different topics. So I apologize for not being in order, but just being with the energy of the moment. We have sun like yesterday. No, yesterday it snowed. The generator was out and it snowed. So that's how quickly it is for those of us to be back in winter. Literally, we're in the land of the 5 month winters, basically, um, with a short growing season, but it's a powerful one. And so I would sit under the sun and then go inside periodic periods throughout the week, sit out under the sun, and then go back inside. This is Son of God. I do think that there is a spiritual connection between us and the sun, even though there are popular conspiracy theories about the sun today and other things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe they are chemtrailing the skies when the sun is more active for a reason. And I believe that I've stumbled upon not only the patterns of the sun, but observing subtle increases of them flipping on the program. And because I'm looking at spaceweather.com and spaceweather.gov so often, I'm aware of when they're talking about whether there's a geomagnetic storm at the moment or it being expected. And even if, there are people that really look at solar minimum on a deep level, tipping my hat to them, and the advanced levels of the sun's activity down to the minute level, down to the second that they're looking at. I'm not taking it that far. I'm not looking at all the charts. But I still believe that all of that, even the subtle activity that's not necessarily bloop, bloop on the planetary K index, is still affecting us, is still feeding us that light energy. So I haven't been exposed to like a lot of stories about this, but there are people that do sun dances or other rituals where they may fast under the sun. And there are other biological factors and things to consider other than spiritual for such a activity. Also, the visualization of getting one's food from the sun. Now, I've never done anything like fast for multiple days, just visualizing food from the sun, but others have. I don't believe everything that's posted on Facebook or was going around a few years ago about a certain somebody going so many days, you know. But ultimately, the body can't survive on less, segueing this back to food, on what it's programmed to think that it needs. So the body will adjust to less food. So when I'm able to upgrade to something like having my own chickens, that would also require some security. This is bear country. And when there are issues like droughts, although the snowpack recently might provide some relief, but it's still an overall drought, that affects the food supply of the bears, and they work their way up to areas like this. So, there's the reality of living in an area so close to their home that, you need to be at a certain level, I would think, to be able to protect yourself if things like that come around. So I'm not trying to rush certain things. I think certain things like fencing come before that. But for me, it's really a spiritual experience about stepping back from the restaurants, from the people, even a normal, healthy, quote unquote, sex life or dating life. I'm not in a region where there's a bunch of people on social media hooking up, or if they were, it wouldn't be long before the whole town knew. It's just a smaller community where it's also more difficult for outsiders, especially if you're extra different. So I'm totally outside of a lot of the standardized boxes that are here. Um, and I'm in between mountains again. So there's a certain overtone, an overshadowing, or magnetism that I think to a certain degree holds consciousness in a stunted status or state, limited state. To where people like me are too different. I mean, there's cool different, then there's like perceived crazy different, not cool different, bad different. Um, and people tend to treat people that are multiply or different on multiple levels with a certain level of discrimination. Okay, and so that's the certain reality of it. For somebody like me, even though I'm not getting, you see, the whole thing, one would think, but I've had some time to develop some experience. The whole thing leaves a guy like me predisposed to be super addicted to social media because of the inner world that I've created. And so the discipline that I've been exercising in the 6 months, especially since August of last year, where psychologically I feel like I've gone through a lot. I actually have gone through a lot living here, and a lot of it having to do with the isolated tone to it all. I was going to read a page from here. Um, The whole idea of any communication with sun, or heaven forbid, reverence toward it, comes through our cultural filter as something dark and dangerous at worst, or ignorant and primitive at best. This is somewhat ironic, but is not surprising considering the most impressions we have of solar worship are those reported by the same priests who burned or melted down everything they can find that was connected to it. And so I've said before, I feel like we are in a modern age of the Gnostics being hunted or slandered online, those of us that are trying to awaken as many people as possible, help them unplug themselves. We're not the ones actually doing it, but we may say certain words that help them remember, that help them heal themselves. So I want to steer back to just basic modern contemplations. It's an ongoing conversation about off the grid. Here we are facing all of this about 5G, and I'm in an area where we're already not even getting cell connection. I mean, this is something that I saw coming. Other people also like to throw negativity and say, if you go do this, you'll die. They literally say that. I've literally seen people do this time and time again that think that they have things figured out. They don't allow in their filtering process, like success story may be a strong word. I don't know why it should be seen as that. People really need to upgrade their negative thinking. There is a time and place to recognize when someone succeeds at something or remains alive while not having a bazooka, or all the things that go along with that. So one of the things that I bring to you is it's not like a Mary Poppins slash Little House on the Prairie slash. I mean, there are some people out there, and it's great when you have a significant other that can help someone develop their off-grid homestead. I also realize there's some other single men out there with YouTube channels. I guess there's Prepper Nurse, others. They're talking about current events and they're in a rural backdrop, and that's pretty cool on that level. Again, though, I'm all over the map because for me, it's about tapping into those same issues that I've been discussing for years from a off-grid backdrop without not only the luxuries but the distractions. I mean, let's just be honest, I am to a certain degree an addictive personality, and I don't think that I do very well in those urban environments. Hell, I could become maybe even addicted to some of the negativity going on around me. And on one level, hell, it can make for one hell of a YouTube video where Alex Ansary is just going fucking off. And you can go back and see me, like, I'm not breaking down, but I am explaining the effects of gentrification. I'm explaining the have and have nots. I'm explaining the gender warfare. I'm explaining a number of different things while I'm living in the canopy of the back of a truck in Portland, Oregon, while YouTubing it, driving around. Thank God I got insurance before I left Portland. When the rain comes down after a period in which it hasn't rained, all that oil makes the roads like MLK, for example, in Portland, Oregon, very slick. So even though I'm braking, right, and traffic's not going very fast, the homemade green teardrop camper still, it wasn't going to stop it. That weight and the stuff I'm carrying, unfortunately, I should have been prepared for something like that. The tire tread probably wasn't all that good. So, mild bumper damage to the woman's vehicle. The police were laughing at me. Fortunately, some of the guys that were watching me across the street giggling at the auto repair place, I begged them to help me pull it off the road so it wouldn't get towed. And that's exactly what they did. And the universe seemed to be watching over me in those days, working through also some audience members. And in a very short amount of time, the means were there for me to get out of Portland forever in a RV, which I purchased at the last second. from a guy named Aaron, which is maybe it's a past life thing. A lot of people confuse me, which my name's Alex, for Eric. I guess his name is Aaron, but that's a side note. A lot of people confuse me when they meet me for an Eric. So maybe some of you have thought that as well. Maybe some of you might fill me in. I think you're more on the intuitive side why people confuse me for an Eric. Is there some sort of a side thing going on with that? But that aside, the stars were aligned and years of manifestation led to the steps. And so actually we're talking about April. April was the time. Wow. It's not just the anniversary for me coming up on the land here. It would actually be 2 full years between leaving Portland for the second time, because it was the first time I left Costa County, came back to Portland, living in my vehicle for a year while doing Out to the Box TV. Then I leave in April 2015. After being in Portland for a full year, it seemed like almost ritualistic, like I was somewhat earning something. And there were certain things that I was involved in, even protesting a cuddle house. Then there was just like an element of not only raw reporting, but activism. I didn't megaphone a lot, but there was a couple things that I like. There was elements of the old Alex that was back in action, but it was different. It wasn't the same Portland. It was a Portland that had already fallen years after the Thriller dance, zombie apocalypse ritual. You can just look that up as I'm speaking of it, the Portland, Oregon zombie dance. Years later, I'm thinking about my early commentary about them like summoning the collective zombie entity thought form. And I honestly think it took them over. And that Portland's always been a high energy, high, low energy, a high and a low to just an intense energy that's drawn a lot of people there. And I got out in time. So yes, there's heartbreak, and yes, there's elements of me and my ego, which is human. That's got to be attached to the Portland Alex persona, or the Portland that Alex once knew. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's a part of me that I'm trying to evolve beyond in the off-grid experience. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something that happens easy when you're in my shoes and you're an outsider, and it's not a type of community that just welcomes in people from the outside. Even when I contacted someone, a person helping the homeless, I felt scrutinized because of the things that I do on my channel that she may not like, that others may not like. And I've come across more judgment than I ever have before in the recent years. And right now it's kind of like, I don't run around handing out my YouTube channel to strangers to get their take on it now, but it's more or less, it's kind of like wetting your finger and sticking it out to the wind and seeing what direction it goes, what direction the wind is flowing. And, I look to YouTube for cues, elements of my own audience is getting me, or being defensive regarding my experiences. I think elements of my audience are more open than ever. The energy seems more peaceful than ever, but it hasn't always felt this way. I would say a few years ago and whatnot, there would even be like more dislikes when I was challenging the status quo regarding Donald Trump, and now a few more people have woken up. But it's like I'm not stuck on that discussion, by the way. But I'm a contrarian. You're never going to see me behind a mainstream candidate. I mean, they have Tulsi, if that's her name, the congresswoman from Hawaii. It's packaged too nice. CNN is doing a thing with her. It's too nice. The packaging is too nice. Yes, she's recognizing the victims of war. I recognize her recognizing the victims of war. I recognize she has darker skin. I recognize she's Hawaiian. I recognize she's female. But I also recognize the packaging and can understand that even if somebody says what we want them to hear and is pretty and is going to be an independent party person, right? That doesn't mean then that is a legitimate place to put our energy. We vote with our energy and what we do with our lives, what we do with our time, what we do with our dollars. And again, I want to thank those of you that have donated to my work, past, present, and future. You make this possible. There's not tons of money rolling in. I struggle. But you know what? What does roll in, right, is better than the piddly amount that Google and YouTube is leaving me with. People like me have been thrown under the bus for a long, long time. And to sit and watch, and I'll say his name again, Christopher Green, because I mean, he just got darker and darker, like he's possessed. And to know that he is in my heart, and I don't have to prove this to anyone. I think it would be dangerous to go on a that type of a campaign. I think people have come after me because of what I've exposed about some of these top dogs, deceivers in the alternative media. But what's coming out of people like him and others is so dark. And how they spin this, an event is coming, an event is coming, and those types of survival products that they sell, anyways, from the backpacks to the actual food kits, not only do I not agree with their politics, I wouldn't partake in their recommended dosage of whatever marked up crap they're selling under the banner of food supply. I mean, I literally have come across these people in person. The Portland Preparedness Center was a very brief survival store experience in which someone that I reached out to in order to get some money to make some commercials for him at a time where people were getting sponsors for online radio shows and I was doing Oracle broadcasting. I began to talk to him about um, doing actual recordings or videos pointing to the products. He began to talk to me about looking for a storefront in Portland, Oregon before 2012, but they were more on a fanatical end, like Planet X end. Not to attack you if you look at things like that or Nibiru, but you need to be aware, and this is my experience. A lot of people that hardcore focus on those topics have a lot of other questionable information that's running concurrent and dovetail. And I've seen the malicious nature of the people that will sell people whatever they are willing to buy. And if someone's put into a desperate situation to where the end is coming tomorrow, there really not might not be of tomorrow. And then you have a few things happen that kind of reinforce the type of supply and demand where there's a run on something and they don't have it. Oh my God, it's so much more valuable. And then we had the Fukushima event, and the Portland Preparedness Center was featured in the news because they ran out because they didn't have enough because well who saw that coming? To thus have enough iodine and things of that nature for a shitload of people to be coming to the store right after the Fukushima event, again in closer proximity to Portland. And there was something about, by the way, me around that time period, like literally within days of Fukushima, the beginning to the end of my time in Portland took place like that. Like with the event of Fukushima, other events were taking place in my life to get me out of the West Coast. It didn't happen all at once. And I know radiation travels around, but there still is something about proximity in some areas be even closer and having a more direct impact, even if it's not measurable. I've even read some studies about miscarriages in the Pacific Northwest with regards to that time period of March, the period afterwards of 2011, 2012. And so a lot of people are being spoon fed false information about prepping for food without ever having actually lived off the grid and knowing what they can do and what their body needs, what their body can survive on, things of that nature. And so these are really important things. And so, and I want to be more frugal with the money that I'm spending. I think about how many times did I go through like a 32 container of peanut butter, which is a healthy option, trying to have peanut butter and apples more than candy, just to get more peanut butter and apples. Where there's certain online companies out there where there's like 5 pound, 30 pound tubs of peanut butter. And I'm starting to think more, outside the box with regards to um, doing the food supply thing again, in a day and age in which, in recent years, I've had the luxury and ability to drive my car into town and get more food. I can also receive UPS packages and FedEx on the land, so that's also an advantage. So I'm also open to suggestions. But one of the things that I get to have experience with living off the grid is having my own trial runs, trial runs. And just like you've seen, there's periods in which there's been periods in which the car didn't start. There's been periods in which I've had to find a mechanic and it didn't happen right away, where I had to turn to Facebook and pay people literally money to get a ride. Last time I bought steak and some meat items and some cat food. And I never saw those items again. Um, Maybe they needed it more than me as well. But I need to be more aware when I get in cars and get out of cars, if I'm being given a ride, that I don't leave things behind. So many different things have happened in my life in that type of situation, where like a key's left behind or a phone's left behind. Don't do phones anymore, and there's reasons for that. It's the energy. It's how it connects with the grid. And so ultimately, when I go to these towns, I'm getting supplies and I'm letting go of this mentality of needing to uproot myself and find a little local community here around some of these areas. I keep my eyes open for it, but it is what it is. When the time is right, I think that would be very psychologically healthy for me to do something again where I go and I'm willing to do it again. Take Greyhound. I would love to take Amtrak. Maybe somewhere in California. There's a place up in Grand Junction, Colorado, where I can get on Amtrak. Okay, so from Grand Junction, Colorado, Amtrak, I think that would be like an awesome thing for me. Not so much a road trip, but Amtrak when the time is right. And so the idea of living off the grid and then having like a periodic return to the city with the help of certain people, maybe to put on a presentation, maybe the future doesn't have a bunch of disasters waiting for us. But the reality of the situation, our situation, the modern day and age of living off the grid and being aware of these things, is that we are living in a time in which we are still on the edge. And it's also therapeutic. So I'm trying to keep this outside the box of looking at it one way, right? I will listen to Art Bell. In particular, I like the 1994 episodes. And they're talking about a number of spiritual topics. So again, we're going back then 25 years. So isn't it awesome hearing about like predictions about like everything like collapsing, like Ed Dames, 1995 on the Art Bell show? And when it comes to nostalgia, actual talk radio, I've developed a stronger appreciation for the early 90s because that actually takes me back to being 14 years old when my grandmother, Ruth Nagel, NAGL, um, would listen because I had to actually live. I had to move in with my grandmother for a few months when I was naughty and skipped school for a week at Wilson High School. So that started another period of moving. And that was a challenging period of my life. And I was up in Longview, Washington. So I have fond memories of hearing Art Bell on the stereo. To me, in my opinion, I'd already been exposed through my mother to a variety of ideas that already made my mind up about a number of different things. It was more or less caught up in the emotionalism of my adolescence. But I don't think that I had any questions at all at a very young age as to whether we were alone in the universe or not. I just had not yet had the experience. I also think that on a soul level that I deliberately got myself in trouble in the late 90s. I mean, like that didn't have to happen. That didn't have to happen. And as I watched Basketball Diaries, and my situation was not as bad, um, I mean, they're doing China White in New York. My situation in the late 90s was just tar shit. But it immediately entered me in the criminal justice system. It immediately eliminated my Second Amendment. And it immediately well, it took a few years, put me at a street level in which I had to pull myself out of that. Because when you're early 20s and you're healthy enough, you can still pull off really just getting another job. They really like them young. And a lot of people, they're like, get a job, mom. They actually don't acknowledge age discrimination or other forms of discrimination from outsiders. But Portland was an easier place with regards to employment during certain years and places and at a certain age. So much has changed since the 90s and the 2000s. So there's something about becoming an adult, right? And it was like my early going off the grid. Like, I'm going to like not be normal. I'm going to like deliberately get myself and allow this G-man, my old friend Gunner, old friend, former friend. I hope he's doing well, but I haven't known him in a long, long time. Live somewhere in Arizona. Hope he's doing well. But he was there certainly to introduce me to getting in trouble and poisoning myself. And looking at Basketball Diaries, I can easily see how Basketball Diaries represents the archonic interference in human affairs through that actor, that Leonardo DiCaprio, through the things that were happening to him, his environment being an influence, but also a little karma there where he was disrespecting a prostitute. We put pretzel uh, residue from a bag on her head after she solicited. He later was in a similar situation, nodding off, and she throws a few dimes at him, thinking he's going to get $20, $25, has some change thrown at him. Other things are in there that never happened to me, but happened to him in the New York area because he was opened up to that negativity, that darkness through the possession of addiction. There were people trying to take advantage of him as a result, like a pedophile. In the church basketball team, the coach of the Catholic school. And of course, there's a lot of stuff there with that particular religion and pedophilia, unfortunately, and just in general in our day and age. On a soul level, though, we can make decisions to make major mistakes and end up in places like jail to where we're humiliated in the sense of the strip search. And we can find ourselves protected, thus, though, from other forms of harm. And upon getting out, like the remarkable speed at which my life changed for the better, as if like it was all a play, all a script, now just merely a player in that script of life. At first you fuck up, right? Get marked, stamped. Now you're an adult after like not getting into any trouble as a juvenile, let alone smoking something as simple as marijuana. Like literally, I wasn't a straight A kid, but granted, if I was in the right environment, conducive to learning, not trauma, I'm sure I would have excelled. Same thing if I was to be at a young age taught how to work on cars. I believe I would have excelled. I believe I would have excelled, granted certain conditions were in play for me to become a guitar player and even be in a band. Other levels of talent, even building, it just wasn't the lifetime for certain things to be at the forefront. So in my life, certain things have lacked, like certain building skills that certain men will laugh at. While all this other time, I'm building other skills, other databases of knowledge, sharing with you, and thus you share with me periodically. Some of you on a monetary level, some of you energetically, through prayers and positive thoughts, not negative thoughts. And for those that do have a habit of projecting negative thoughts, actually understanding the power of thoughts and changing behavior. People sending better energy over the years, realizing I'm not with CNN. I'm not like the others. I'm not against you. I actually have a lot of information that can help you. So as long as we align things correctly in the place where it needs to be, we can have a good old time here. Giddy up. The Seinfeld series. Taking a brief look at that recently, other DVDs. I've always kind of like knocked the movie thing. It's the zombie apocalypse. No, not necessarily that theme, although I avoid that. The zombie nature to a lot of movies, just in general, right? They're not necessarily zombie apocalypse theme movies, but they're acting like zombies anyways. But will I watch select nostalgia content? I mentioned 21 Jump Street recently for a little bit of entertainment, or Hunter, or other things. Miami Vice, a little bit there, not too much. Haven't watched the old school A teams in a while, but things that take us back to our childhood. And so sometimes it's healthy to go off the grid from the news wire and to explore a healthy bit of fantasy, or to explore a healthy bit of nostalgia and adventure, and to mindfully go somewhere else in our own mind And so I don't actually practice astral traveling or remote viewing, but the act of focusing on a particular place, whether it be a place in the universe or a place here on the earth, what comes to me often is sandy beaches. What comes to me often is that the actual biological spacesuit that is Alex Ansary before you might be almost best positioned at a beach somewhere, or somewhere near the equator or a different place, and even experiencing different people. Different people somewhere else may respond to me differently, but then would I be on the same path? Do I need to be there to tap into positive energies from the universe, as above, so below? And not getting deep into meditation here, but bringing in the heavenly energies and bringing in the earth energies and connecting them to the energy centers within the body. And that's more important to me, is to be able to reach that climax, to reach that peak, right? Just to get Pikes Peak up in Colorado Springs, the Garden of the Gods. And why do they call it that? Some of these interesting, like, rock formations look like they're praying. Um, but like to hit that peak, right? To where we have stepped back from so many of those things. And the path that I've taken to talk about current events and to feel emotionally that I've stepped back from that, like that's like walking on some sort of a rope, like don't fall off, don't fall off. And tell you what, falling off that rope and losing balance on that's emotional pain, that's turmoil, that's nightmares, that's like, whoa, here I am off the grid and I'm watching these things and these people fighting on YouTube, and here I am tossing and turning. I'm already on a bad mattress. Hopefully I'll upgrade that next, now that I've upgraded a computer. But people that I'm communicating with online and things that are happening on YouTube and potential future events, these things should not be at the forefront of my consciousness while I'm tossing and turning, tossing and turning. But I've also in this time here have come to see the power of that type of concentrated focus on another and them on me, and that type of spark, and maybe different places on the planet where maybe the portals seem to be opening or stronger, or the psychic energy or connection seems to be stronger, or the cordage through people online. Well, then, if there's some interference, how can that sensitivity and connection to other things be used for the highest good? So I'm still in the kind of exploratory phase of this, perhaps as I learn certain things, like I've learned certain meditations and pass them on to you, and there's other things and pass them on to you as if you're family, extended family, maybe a soul group family. Um, but it is like passing on that knowledge and information. That's what one of the guests in that 1994 Art Bell episode was hypothesizing, that we have a large population now full of many people that are part of perhaps a soul, or a soul that's splintered outward. And I've said that to you before. The idea of even a soul fracturing, and like glass, like, psh, and there seems to be parallel understandings with a lot of us. And other people also seem to be having parallel, like, elements of darkness that we can see. Various people around the world that are affected by this, what we sometimes call the dark grid or the evil grid, right? Not so much like the power grid, right, powered by nuclear power plants, but something of the etheric nature, right? That spiritual parasites, of a spiritual form, etheric form, uses transport elements of the dark grid, where they're transporting themselves to different elements of this dimension as they feed on the human species. Okay, now I'm going deep down the supernatural. And even in those early Art Bell episodes, there's talks about people getting like bad things happening to them by talking about the paranormal. And here we are on YouTube, like the ultimate um, technology that can court us with all different forms of intelligence, including non-human intelligence. And forms of non-human intelligence can possess some elements of the audience to attack us on YouTube. We've all seen this because of what we're talking about, the supernatural. By talking about the supernatural, like Beetlejuice, 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 it comes with a certain reality. Especially, where I'm going with this from my perspective. From my perspective, as we head towards 5G, it's a different outcome than for you. You see, for you, most of you live in the city, you're thinking about your personal health regarding 5G, which is appropriate. You also need to be thinking about B, the mental health of others that could pose a physical threat to you under the influence. Under the influence. As a guy that already feels marginalized as it is online, seeing elements of AI working against me, where do you think my common sense concerns go in the age of 5G? Do you think that I'm foreseeing more or less possessed people online? How far will this go? Can we war game it to the point where we can see where this goes? Yes. So wisdom is taking elements of that intuition and not freaking out and going, oh my God, paper bag, but going, okay, okay. I'm going to take this knowledge that's coming in and the warnings, and I'm going to think 3 moves ahead in order to take this on. I've also mentioned before, some of you may struggle with a sense of high pitched sound. And there's also a perspective that that is also indicative of having a spiritual experience. But a lot of people may be having this in relation to technologies that may be unnatural. And I will notice the unnatural sound on a deeper level because I'm sensitive when a new computer is on and it has a different type of frequency and oscillation that isn't exactly natural. It isn't exactly creating a natural meditative field. So I can feel that. But if there is something that is, whether it's automated, like an automated AI that may be projecting itself at you when you're waking up to a certain thing, like I'll notice it when I'm like doing videos and on a certain like point that I'm trying to make that point, and there could be some sort of energy that's projected at you that could be sensed through that type of high pitched that may, in some cases, be there to distract that person from making that point by being aware of it as it's happening, remembering what you're talking about, but reflecting that, turning your auric field into a mirror. And we will talk more about meditation in a future video. But for now, we will bring this to a close. Just want to bring some fresh thoughts regarding off the grid living, some of the practicalities of having to repair things like a generator, how something like a generator and an internet connection, what I have here, can enable me to talk with some of you, how the modern day and age has allowed me to do what I do and not be Bear Grylls, how I am also here to share with you my story of how I've been living away from mainstream society. And really, some would look their, turn their nose up at me and say that I'm still living like a homeless bum or that I am just one step above homelessness. And that's not too far from the truth, right? But the reality is, how close are some people to homelessness, but not the solutions and basic life skills and knowledge to get out of an urban area to where they're just living in their vehicle outside someone's house, twiddling their thumbs, feeling like a marginalized criminal. How is that a way to live? And so, I'm living a way of life on a planet that at the rate that we're going with regulations like this won't be possible in 10 years, possibly even here. Or there's another route that we may go in which we will continue to see a collapse. And I'm a long way away from being self contained for multiple months. And I know that. But I am at the level where I'm self contained for multiple weeks. And in some cases, multiple months. If I was okay with just rice, quinoa, and some wheat. But I'm adapting to that. I'm adapting to less. Um, it would be so much more exciting if we were a society to where there were social clubs that were popular, like bingo, like football, to where off-gridders of various backgrounds, including various racial backgrounds. Okay, so people like me wouldn't feel so on the outside. Um, where there were potlucks and cookouts. And the thing is, this is a historical part of rural America, anyways, especially like chili cookouts, like things like that. And we are like basically living after the social media apocalypse where people have been divided by politics and even people that are like, even amongst themselves, like take Trumpites, for example. I've seen evidence of people that are conservative, Republican, voted Trump, attacking each other, or some people being off-gridders that are for some levels of off-grid rights, and others that believe that the status quo should be upheld, yet they're all for Trump. Yet where is Trump and all that in resolving their differences over land use codes and things of that nature? Answer, doesn't. But today, people are all taken by storm by all of these digital things. 10 years ago, there was a part of me that was so much more idealistic regarding off-gridders in general, as if there was some sort of a purity attached to it. And that is more of an image. Just like some people may falsely move to Portland thinking that they're going to find some sort of progressive utopia, that is an image. And what I'm starting to see so much of right now is the true nature of these places. You know, one of the other things that I want to add into this is living off the grid. Why watch city council hearings? Like tons of them, not just the ones that you're aware of or the ones that I mentioned. I was watching some from Seattle and watching like this is the modern day and age. This is what people think is progress. Hear the people on city council and watch them. It's so much different than Portland. So you have the people that are lined up to speak, and there's so many of them that they're getting like a minute and they're getting upset about it. And it was like a big story where one guy called out the city council for all being on their tablets while he's trying to speak. And he's like, could you all give me your attention? And they're like, no. And by the way, you're down to like a minute 30. So like you might want to like get right to it. And they later apologized. So it's like, I'm not one trying to hold back women or people of color, right? From feeling like they're attaining some sort of equality. But the reality is on the musical chairs of life, in these realities to where there are a lot of homeless for a reason. There is the illusion of equality in the modern day and age. So stay away from blaming like a certain ethnicity or all the women and whatnot or all certain policies, but be honest about how under the guise of equality, some people out there that are in office, okay, are more consumed with their own gain as someone that feels like now it's their time to rise and basically, quote unquote, get theirs. And there's a lot of people out there that are unable to see how there isn't true equality taking place when it's just about them evolving and progressing. And so a lot of these cities are transforming more into slums and ghettos and sewers for specific reasons that people don't really talk about. They talk about how things are going down. They talk about how they don't like the welfare state, how they're grossed out by the homeless, how people are fleeing California. They talk about the effects. The root causes have not really been dealt with. And so when I look at Seattle Council and I look at how few men they even have on the city council, I think these are significant in light of what I've said 5 years ago. Good men leaving mainstream society, future repercussions for women's safety. There's nobody that's even in my league talking about these things, these critical social issues, women's safety from a real angle that the other men and women are not representing. I'm a major asset to public safety, to like common sense and logic, to the people that aren't fully zombified, the people of tomorrow that are really going to be looking for solutions when the lights go out. So there's a lot of different things that I've been kind of mentioning here in this free flow video, right? But I'm learning a lot of really important lessons that other people can apply to their lives as well. I think this is a good place to end it. Until next time, I'm Alex Hansen reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.